I can ask, okay, I'd like to work on the last feedback on sounding more senior level, and pick one of the companies I'm interested in, and let's make a realistic interview question based on that. You see, the AI used Stripe, which was one of the companies that I had mentioned, and which it saved in its memory, and then gave me a question highly relevant without me needing to repeat the context. Everything is dynamic and managed by the AI. There is real money in coaching. Coaches charge from $75 to $250 for interview prep, wellness, or career advice. In this video, I will show you how to build an AI coach that can tap into this market. Previously, it was difficult to build AI coaches using just normal chatbots and RAG systems. But in this video, I will show you how to build dynamic memory attached to your AI coach. This makes the AI coach customizable and reactive to the individual information that your customer or client will give. This means that you can then build an AI coach for the niche that you want to target and earn hundreds, if not thousands of dollars with it. Let's quickly talk about why dynamic memory is very important. In a traditional chatbot, even if it uses RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation, which retrieves information from a corpus of documents it has access to, or even if it uses global memory like the big chatbots like ChatGPT do, there is a lot of information going into the context. And your memory is really just that rolling chat. It gets trimmed as the conversation grows. So stuff that you have mentioned early on gets lost. It doesn't get prioritized by the AI. It resets completely between sessions, except for that global memory, which has very limited ability to be very relevant to your query. So it's great for static documents, FAQs, and knowledge bases, where you retrieve relevant chunks at query time. But it's not tracking preferences, history, or evolution in a coaching session, for example. With dynamic memory, it's different. So the overall context for your prompt is made up both of the chat context as well as a dynamic set of informations. Things you have predefined before, like the user profile that's relevant for that use case, a session memory, so that it tracks the work you've done in that session that's relevant again for the use case, and again a global memory, so things that like preferences, feedback to the AI and how it should respond, things that you want to do in the future sessions. All of that gets re-injected back into the prompt, which is much more efficient than the traditional chatbot plus RAG setup. So it remembers you the next session, it learns your patterns over time, and it gets smarter with every conversation. So dynamic memory is inspired by a cookbook published by OpenAI. They call it Context Engineering for Personalization. I will leave a link to this cookbook in the comments. There are really 4 building blocks that you should know about. First, the state object. This is defining basically the profile and the type of notes you want the AI to keep track of and keep refining over time. There is a distill building block. During a run, you're going to ask the AI to make notes for information it finds relevant for your use case. Third is consolidate. You take the session notes and you consolidate them into global notes that can carry over sessions. Then there is an action of duplicating, making sure that there are no duplicate notes or resolving conflicts. And then the 4th building block is to inject dynamically this information, whether it's the profile, the session notes, or the global notes, into the chat as and when relevant. To make things more concrete, let's look at a life cycle of the memory. When you start a chat at the beginning, you're going to inject some context. Now, if it's your first chat in the first run, you will have nothing in the profile and nothing in the global memory. So you will start from a blank slate. Then you're going to have chat turns with the user, and the agent will reason over the conversation and using injected state plus chat history. So for now, in the beginning, it's just chat history. But during the conversation, it will start distilling information. It calls a tool, save memory note, which we'll look at a little bit later, and it will capture information, whether into the profile, whether into session notes. And at the end of the session, we will have the consolidate step. There, the LLM will look at the conversation, at the session notes and the profile, and refine everything. It will remove duplicates, it will resolve conflicts, and it will clear the session notes, so that the memory that you have is only what's going to be relevant and helpful for a next session. And when you start the next session, you restart this cycle. Now you inject into context the profile information saved from the previous session, as well as the global memory notes, which the AI has decided is going to be useful for the next conversation. And again, we're going to restart the same cycle. We're going to reason, we're going to distill the conversation into session notes, and then we're going to consolidate whatever is relevant into global notes. Okay, so we looked at the building blocks, and now we're going to look at the code. Here I would like to just make a quick suggestion. Don't get overwhelmed by the code if you are unfamiliar with TypeScript, which I'm using here, or the methods that we are using. It's more important to understand how the various concepts work together to achieve the goal, because ultimately in the age of AI, you can use my examples, you can use the cookbook from OpenAI, and you can use Claude Code, Codex, or whatever AI coding agent you have, feed that in. As long as you know what objectives you're trying to achieve and how it should more or less look like, then you're golden. So with that, let's go into the detail. Okay, so the application I'm using is written in TypeScript and has a Svelte front end, but you don't need to know about that, because all that we need to care about is in the agent folder under the lib folder in src or source. We're going to start by understanding the state, the shape of the data that we want the AI to save, refine, and keep injecting into the chats. So this is an interview prep app. We can define some basic data objects like how is the memory node defined, how is the practice session defined, categories of questions, what questions is asked. But the most important is this, the profile. This is the first building block of your state. These are really like CRM level type of information about the profile of the user. Here I have a name, a target role, target companies, years of experience, anything that's relevant and that's going to be useful throughout any session, whether it's a chats in a single session or across many chat sessions. Then we're going to have the interview coach state. This will include that profile that we just looked at, and then two additional levels at least. We're going to have session memory. These are notes that we make relating to one specific session. So let's say we are interviewing for a job at Stripe, and the user has told us something about a previous experience at Stripe. Maybe they did an internship at Stripe, and we want to reuse that potentially in an exercise. And this is the type of note that we will put here, that the person has worked at Stripe and did an internship. Maybe they had some kind of experience there. Maybe they remember a person or a specific case. We save it here. Then we have the third layer, which is the global memory. This is the stuff that you want to carry over between sessions. This is, for example, if we had feedback and we saw that, so the AI saw that the person has difficulties, for example, showing senior leadership perspective in the cases it explains. So we would put that into the memory and say, okay, in the previous session, the user has struggled with elevating their role and their examples to a senior level example. Or we would, record here some preferences. For example, the user is not happy with verbose feedback. It's mentioned they want feedback to be short, direct. So this would be then recorded here in global memory. And then you can add anything else you want. You can customize this to your use case. For example, I added practice history, where we can see the sessions and the learnings from the sessions. If you, for example, tailor it to another use case, like let's say a fitness coach, you can really add whatever you want. For example, you could add preferred repetition cycles, preferred tools, preferred ways to exercise, dietary requirement. I don't know. It's really up to you as a builder to build this up. As long as you have three levels at the minimum, then you will be able to have this dynamic memory concept. And so this is the shape of the data, and then we just use it in the application. And of course, we start off as with an initial state that's blank, and then we will be saving that in really a file. We don't even need a database at this stage. So this is the state after a few conversations in the example that I showed. So we have a profile example, or a profile field, with all that information that we saw on the right-hand side on the browser. We have some global memory. For example, here it was a preference about feedback, needs explicit senior leadership framing. This is the AI itself saved these items. And we have a session memory. For this session, we focus on making leadership stories sound more senior level, for example. And I have this practice history, which is optional, but which I thought would be useful to go back and to find relevant examples of previous sessions. Okay, next we're going to look at the distill phase, basically how we save memory. I'm going to go to the agents file, scroll down to interview coach agent. Here we're using an object from the OpenAI SDK, which is the agent object, which defines your agent, some instructions for handoff if necessary. Here we don't have handoff. Model, here I'm using basically GPT 5.4 mini with medium reasoning. But the most interesting is instructions and tools. So in tools, we're going to give two tools, save memory note tool and update profile tool. We'll get back to that shortly. We have instructions that are built dynamically. There's a static part and then there's a dynamic part. So let's go and look at how it's built. I believe it's in the same file. You're going to see this function build system prompt returns a base instruction, which is non-dynamic. This instruction bit, that's the dynamic bit. That's where we feed the various memories, and then a memory policy. Let's look into each of them in turn. They are in the prompts file. Base instructions, basically, that defines who you are. It's your typical, here you are a behavioral interview coach. You help candidates prepare for a job. Guidelines, boom, lots of reasonable common sense stuff. And some examples of future examples. Nothing out of the ordinary. Instructions is built up by this function, build instructions. And that comes from the memory file. And if we look at it here, build instructions. What does it give us? It gives us different sections. It feeds the user profile. It feeds the practice history, which is the optional thing that I wanted to add, and then the memories. This you will all have in your AI coaches. You have global memories and session memories. All of that is fed to the agent. But how does it figure out what to do, right? This comes in here, but still we haven't told it how to use this information, and this could lead to a lot of unpredictable behavior, right? So that's why we need a memory policy, which is again defined in the prompts file. What does the memory policy say? You're going to receive two sections, global memory, session memory. How to use it. Precedence. This is very important. How to deal with ambiguity. So the candidate's latest message overrides everything. The session memory overrides global when they conflict. Within the same scope, prefer the most recent note by date. It's very important you define these type of things, because otherwise the AI will have a lot of unpredictable answers. And how to update the memory. Use the tool, save memory note, for durable coaching insights, preferences, recurring patterns, and reminders that should survive the current turn. Use update profile for structured profile fields, names like name, role, companies, experience, blah, blah, blah. And again, try to be as clear as possible. it's both. It can be correct to call both tools in the same turn. You can update profile for structured fields, but save memory notes for durable coaching takeaway. And adapt it to your use case. Here you should be as specific to your use case as you want. Do not save throwaway remarks, small talks, or one-off details. And as you see, as you work with your agent and you see some failure cases, update the prompts. So we have that dynamic system prompt, and now we go back to the tools. The tools are here in the same file in the agent. Save memory note tool that uses again a primitive from the OpenAI Agents SDK. Nothing too complicated really. You define a schema of the shape of the data that you want to use, as well as some description, which is basically a kind of prompt. So let's look at the description. I believe it's again in the prompts file. Here you go. It just instructs or informs the AI how to use this tool. So you save a candidate memory note into state.sessionmemory.notes. The purpose, when to use, good categories, when not to use, what to write in text, 1 or 2 sentences maximum, for example, short, specific, blah, blah, blah. Keywords, provide 1 to 2, 3 short one-word lower cases, safety. You can look at the detail in your own time, but it's basically how to remove ambiguity in using this tool. And the schema here is really basic for the tool. So if we go save memory note input schema, this just defines there will be a field called text and then a field called keywords. We use the keywords to just like tags so that we can search easily through the memory. And we have a second tool, update profile tool, again defined with the tool object. Update profile tool description, we go to the prompts, have a look at it. It's here, a bit shorter, but it's the same. It removes ambiguity. How do you use the tool, when, what type of information. Do not use this for speculative inferences. Do not use this for session scoped interview. The more you can remove ambiguity, the better it is. And then we have the schema. Update profile input schema. Where was it? This is it. This is the basically it restricts the schema to the state, the profile state that we had defined earlier, and this is very, very useful. It makes the AI narrow down its responses to exactly what we want to have. Only these fields. Do not start to invent new fields, or and they're optional. It's fine to have some of them in and some of them not. But this type of schema, this is what's useful when using the OpenAI SDK. And so it can be quite dynamic, and it will adapt to as much or as little information that the user gives. So let's try a little demo. Hi, I have worked for 10 years at Nestle. I will be interviewing for sales director jobs, but this time not in food and beverages. I will be in tech sales. So help me train behavioral questions and how to make my experience relevant. Okay, I didn't give a lot of information. So the point here to show is that there will be, the AI will partly fill the information as we wait. You see, interview focus, behavior interview practice when translating non-tech sales experience into tech sales experience. 10 years, sales director. It didn't fill in the target company as the current role because we didn't provide this. And then there is a session memory that requests to reframe non-tech consumer sales experience. That will, that will carry over potentially as a global memory. I believe so, because it's something that the person will want to train at the end of the session, in another session, sorry. Okay, now we're going to look at how we consolidate notes from session notes into global notes that carry over sessions. We're going to go to the consolidation file. Here there's one important function, which is consolidate session notes. We're just basically using just an LLM call. We don't even need to use an agent here. we're going to provide instruction on how to consolidate notes, and we're going to give the global notes the session notes. So everything is always in the prompts. The prompts is really the key. We go to prompts. We're going to go and look at consolidation prompt. So you are consolidating interview coach memory notes into long-term memory. You will receive 2 JSON arrays, blah, blah, blah. Your goal, you're going to update the global notes by merging in session notes. And there are some rules. Keep only durable information, drop session only or ephemeral notes, deduplicate. This is very important so that we don't have context blowed by things that are looking similar. Conflict resolution, if 2 notes conflicts, keep the one with the most recent last update date. And then if date style, prefer session notes because they might be more relevant for the next one. And then a few short examples. Clearly, with the reasoning models, the current ones we have, it's better to start with 0 shots and see if the model makes it. And if not, then add a few shots, which I did here. And for this, even though I'm using the model is GPT 5.4 mini, I'm using high reasoning effort because it does require a little bit of reasoning and judgment. All right, time again for the demo. So I continued this little example where I was a sales director at Nestle. Then I stated that just for this session, I want to focus more on metrics or jargon that tech companies use. It recorded this memory as a session memory, first feedback frame with tech company metrics and jargon. Also, I stated my current role is really director of sales for the cereal section. And after a turn, it's lovely to see it recorded the current role. And now we're going to end the session, and my expectation is that you will only carry over one of these session memories, not this one, because I definitely said this tech company metrics and jargon training, I just want to do it for this session. So let's see what happens. And there you go. The global memory, that one session memory was discarded, and it's not saved in the global memory. Everything else that I mentioned is still there. My current role, which was mentioned in my last chat, that's still there. Perfect. Okay, now let's talk about how we inject this memory into every turn with the agent. If we go back to the agent file and to the agent definition, I didn't mention this type. The agent has receiving a context, interview coach run context. And this is defined as like a state draft. So it's a snapshot of the state that we had defined with the profile, with the memories. And then these 3 fields, these are basically the strings that we're going to use to feed into the system prompt. So when we talked about the instructions, I told you about the function here, but we didn't talk about what it's receiving. It's receiving this run context, which is basically an updated state when there is a new memory formed, for example, and it feeds it into the build system prompt so that the prompt sent to the AI includes the latest snapshot of the state. And this is done nicely with this run context because you can use things that are called hooks that basically fire off on specific events. And this comes from the Agent SDK by OpenAI. So you can register, for example, on agent start, you can prepare this context, which here all it does is translate the context from information that's saved in that run context into strings, which we can feed the instructions and the system prompt. And it also fires on when there is a tool has been used, right? When we save a memory or an update profile, it fires off and it prepares the strings that then are fed into here, into the instructions. So that every time, every turn, we get the latest perspective. We don't need to, again, do an API call to the file where we save state or in production to a database. It's done automatically. In all fairness, this is the part which will be a bit difficult to wrap your head around But as you will work with context and how it's injected, if you repeat the pattern or tell the AI coding agents to repeat the pattern, then everything will fall into place. So now we've looked at all the building blocks, and let's return to a situation where we were the senior product manager with 6 years of experience, and we want to interview for fintech jobs, and we have these memories. I prefer direct, specific feedback. In leadership stories, even concise answers must show senior level judgment, because I am looking for senior roles. In failure stories, need sharper root cause and process change framing to make the lesson credible and senior level. Let's say, hello, what shall we work on today? Let's work on conflict first. It's a current gap and a high-value behavioral area for senior PM interviews. I didn't state who I am, what I'm doing, or what I'm targeting. It just knows it already. And it feeds these, it provides relevant outcomes to keep training me. And all of that based on the system that we just built. And so here is the beauty for you, AI builder. For your use case, all you need to change is the state definition that we saw in the types file, and you change the prompts. But everything else is reusable. It's the same. You're going to have an AI coach for fitness, for career, for interview prep, for financial advice, you name it. Whatever niche you want to be in, you can build a customized, adaptable AI coach very easily. I hope this was useful. I will be posting every week an applied AI video like this. So if you would like to follow along, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you have any questions or if I can help you. Thank you for watching. Take care.